Mr. Montgomery?
I'm right here, Elder. How do you feel?
Kind of funny.
Can you move your feet?
No, not anymore. I can't even feel them.
You won't feel anything. Close your eyes, Elder.
Why?
There'll be less for you to remember.
I'll remember it anyway. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Elder, just because a thing isn't wanted, that doesn't make it easy to lose.
Stand where you are.
Who are you?
Police.
Yes, of course.
Are you Ernest Montgomery?
Yes.
What is it, Doctor?
It's nothing, Elder. Don't worry.
We have a warrant for your arrest, Doctor.
Please wait outside.
What?
I said wait outside. I'll be finished in a few minutes.
What are they going to do?
It doesn't concern you, Elder.
Will you go to jail?
Close your eyes, Elder. There. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Mr. Preston, how do you feel about abortion?
Right now, I'm more interested in how you feel. How long have you been performing these operations?
Almost 8 years.
And how many women have you treated in that time?
I'm not really certain. 1,500.
1,500?
And you've never been arrested before?
No,
Then how did you lose your license?
I didn't. I'm still licensed to practice medicine in New York.
Well, then I'm afraid I don't understand. Why, was it money?
No, money doesn't interest me. Would I still be in prison unable to make bail if I had money? Would it require a court-appointed attorney?
Then why did you do it?
Because I felt that it was right. Isn't that all you have to know?
No, I need more. Now, what can I tell a jury? You say you have performed 1,500 illegal abortions. Why? I have to know.
Mr. Preston, in the past 8 years, over 20,000 expectant mothers have come into my office, each one of them wanting an abortion.
20,000?
That's right. And I only operated on 1,500. That's 1 out of 14.
On what basis did you decide to operate?
Well, more than half of them were married. I refused all of them.
Why?
There was nothing preventing them from having children. Their motives were purely selfish. I also turned down a number of unmarried women whom I felt were strong enough and mature enough to stand up under the abuse of public opinion.
Who else?
Promiscuous women whose pregnant condition only interfered with their amusement. And also women with strong religious feelings were caught in a conflict of sin. They were trying to negate one sin with another.
Then you did consider it a sin?
They did. That's what mattered. But there were times when I felt that it would have been sinful to refuse to help.
When was that?
When I'd sit across my desk from a teenage girl who'd made a terrible mistake and had nowhere to turn. Try to imagine that predicament. Accidentally pregnant, yet not strong enough or mature enough to want the child. On the one side, the law says that she must have the baby. On the other, her parents, relatives, society in general condemns and ostracizes her if she does what the law demands. If she has the baby, she's ruined. If she doesn't, she's breaking the law.
This country is run by laws, Doctor. Why did you decide to break the law?
I couldn't think about the law. I was faced with unhappy, suffering people. Human beings who were alone and afraid. They'd come to me because I could help them, because I had the training and the ability to help them.
You also had a responsibility, Doctor.
A responsibility to whom? To the people who can't forgive a mistake, or to the victims of that mistake?
All right, Doctor. I can tell that to a jury. Ken, I'd like you to get in touch with a girl named Sandra Mason. She was in the office when the doctor was arrested.
Is that the one who was on the operating table?
No, that was Eleanor Stafford. I'll see her myself. Doctor, I'll see you again soon. In the meantime, is there anyone we can contact for you? Family, friends?
No, my wife died 20 years ago. I had a daughter, but she was killed some years ago in an accident. It's because I'm alone that I could do all of this. I couldn't harm anybody but myself. There is something that you could do if you have the time.
Of course. What is it?
Yesterday was my daughter's birthday. She would have been 28. I usually manage to get out to the cemetery to visit her on her birthday. I like to leave a small bouquet of flowers on her grave. I'd pay you for it.
I'll find time. Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth. Thou bleeding piece of earth.
Mr. Preston?
Miss Sandra Mason?
Yes.
Sit down.
I'm sorry you had to wait here. I couldn't ask you to come to our apartment. My parents don't know anything about what's happened. I told them I had to go to the library to return some books.
Sandra, how old are you?
18.
Now, how did it happen that... Well, how did you get to Dr. Montgomery?
Marjorie took me.
Marjorie?
My older sister.
Sandra, how did it happen that you needed Dr. Montgomery?
I met this man. He's a very nice man. There's no point in asking me his name because I won't tell you.
I don't have to know who it is.
I began seeing him. Finally, he told me that he loved me. And I loved him too. I really did. And then... well, then it happened, that's all. He said that's what happened when two people loved each other.
After that?
When I found out about, about the baby, I couldn't believe it. I tried to kill myself. I bought some sleeping pills. I took almost the whole bottle. But Marjorie caught me. She made me throw up. I almost died. Right now, I wish I had. But it doesn't matter now.
What doesn't matter, Sandra?
They'll know everything now. They'll know everything. I have to appear in court the day after tomorrow, and they'll know. It'll be just as bad as if I'd never gone to Dr. Montgomery in the first place. It'll be the same thing. Oh, you don't know them. They'll hate me so much, and they'll never, never forget. I can't live like that. I just can't. They'll pray for my soul and wish I was dead at the same time.
Listen, son. Maybe I can help. I can't promise you anything, but maybe there's something that I can do.
Hello?
Miss Stafford?
Yes, I'm Miss Stafford.
My name is Preston. I'm an attorney. I represent Dr. Ernest Montgomery.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm supposed to talk to you.
Why not?
Well, the district attorney's office called me and asked me to testify against Dr. Montgomery.
Are you a complaining witness?
I don't know. What is it?
Have you a grievance against Dr. Montgomery?
No.
Well, you see, as far as the district attorney is concerned, you're a material witness. That is, you were present when the alleged crime took place. I'm here to see if there's any reason to call you for the defense. May I come in?
Oh, yes, please do.
Miss Stafford, you were on the operating table when the police arrested Dr. Montgomery, is that right?
Yes.
Was the operation successful?
Yes.
I'm sorry, do these questions embarrass you?
No, they don't, honestly. Go on.
What did the doctor charge you?
$25.
Was that the door, Eleanor? Oh, excuse me.
Mother, this is Mr. Preston. He's a lawyer.
How do you do?
Well, we can finish this another time if I'm disturbing.
No. Do you represent Dr. Montgomery?
Well, yes.
Well, if there is anything that we can do, please call on us. We're anxious to help him. Well, the truth is that Mr. Stafford and I took Eleanor to Dr. Montgomery. He helped her when nobody else would. We're very grateful to him.
Mrs. Stafford, perhaps you'd better tell me exactly what did happen. How are you, Doctor?
I'm all right.
I went out to the cemetery.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth. That's an unusual epitaph.
Yes, I suppose it is.
Where's it from?
Nothing. Just something I thought of. I thought it was appropriate.
According to a Dr. Nathan Benedict, you and he shared offices together for 12 years. And during that time, you had one of the most successful orthopedic practices in the city. Is that correct?
Yes?
Then nearly 10 years ago, you suddenly moved out of your office without giving Dr. Benedict any explanation. Why was that?
I've already told you I saw a gap between the existing law and its alternatives, and it was a gap that I decided to fill.
Most people have strong feelings about one thing or another, but you let your feelings destroy your career and alter your whole life. Why?
My career seemed unimportant to me. There are hundreds of good orthopedists. I don't see what difference my motives can make.
They're all we have to present to a jury. I'm trying to prevent you from spending 5 years in prison.
I'm not looking to be saved. Don't you see that?
Then what do you want?
To be understood.
Then help me to understand you. Why did you do it? What made you battle the law all by yourself?
Because I believed in what I was doing. Somebody had to make safe, inexpensive abortions available for people who needed them.
Dr. Montgomery, I've thought about this a great deal, and I believe I'm right. Let me plead you guilty and throw you on the mercy of the court.
No! There are things to be said, aloud, in public. I want to be heard.
I understand your principles, but principles aren't admissible in a court of law. Only facts.
You're telling me I'm going to lose, aren't you? It doesn't matter. I expect to lose. I lost when I was caught. Mr. Preston, how are bad laws revised?
By legislative action.
And how's that action brought about?
Usually by the necessities of the times.
And by altered public opinion?
Yes.
Well, I want to see if I can alter public opinion. I want to see if I can help change the law on abortion. I was caught because I adhered to a principle. I want the facts to be known whether I win or lose. You can help me. Will you do it?
I'm not sure I approve of using the law as a forum rather than an instrument of justice.
There are all kinds of justice.
Yes, I suppose there are. I don't know whether I agree with your principles or not, but I respect you a great deal for having them. All right, Doctor. Let it be your way. Thank you very much. We'll call you when we need you.
I'll be waiting. Goodbye, Mr. Preston.
Goodbye, Miss Gunther.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Had enough?
that?
She's a former patient, Dr. Montgomery's.
Oh,
She
yeah?
wants to testify for him. She's the 5th woman I've seen today. They keep telephoning perfect strangers wanting to help. Volunteering to have their names splashed all over the newspapers. Dr. Montgomery must be a pretty unusual man.
Yeah, he must be.
How'd you make out with Sandra Mason?
Listen, Dad, I want to ask you something. You know, Sandra Mason's only 18 years old, and her folks don't know about this yet. And I was thinking maybe if you could talk to the district attorney, he might agree not to call her as a witness.
Why should I do that?
Oh, you should have seen her, Dad. She was... Well, if her folks find out about it...
I can't be concerned with that. I have a case to try.
She tried to kill herself so that her folks wouldn't know. Besides, the DA doesn't need her anyway. He's got enough evidence without her. You could talk to him.
You know better than that, Ken. He won't let her off the hook. She was in the room when the police came in.
Well, you could try.
It won't do any good.
Well, I promised to help her if I could.
Well, you shouldn't have.
Why not?
First, because you can't deliver. And second, because we need her cross-examination. It'll help our client. I'm sorry, Ken.
Well, what am I going to say to her?
Well, you could tell her Dr. Montgomery risked a great deal to help her when she needed him. Now it's her turn. Mrs. Morse? Mrs. Morse, you're a housewife, is that correct?
That's right.
Have you ever served on a jury before?
No, this is my first time.
Do you know the nature of the case about to be tried?
Yes.
What is it?
Well, you know.
Yes, I do, but I'm asking you.
Abortion, isn't it?
Does the word embarrass you, Mrs. Morse?
A little, yes.
Do you know there's such a thing as legal abortion in this state?
No.
How do you feel about that?
Legal or illegal? I'm against it.
I'll excuse you for cause.
Consent. Step down, please. Clerk.
Mr. Stephen B. Patterson, seat number 1.
Mr. Patterson, do you have any feelings about doctors one way or another?
I don't think so.
If you don't mind my asking, what happened to your eye?
I lost it in an automobile accident.
Did a doctor try and save it for you?
Yes, sir.
But he was unsuccessful.
Yes.
Do you hold it against him?
No, I'm grateful to him. I'm lucky to be alive.
Then would you treat a doctor differently from anyone else?
No, why should I?
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mrs. O'Rourke, how do you feel about abortion?
It's a sin. A mortal sin.
And are mortal sins tried in a court of law?
No.
By whom, then?
By God.
By God only?
Yes, sir.
Then you are here to consider man's laws and not God's.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, no. This juror is acceptable to the defense.
At approximately 3:30 on the afternoon of August 4th, we received an anonymous call telling us to investigate the ground floor premises at 637 West 71st Street for possible illegal medical practices.
What did you do then?
Well, we proceeded to that address and entered the premises.
What did you see upon entering?
Well, the doctor was bending over...
Excuse me. Can you identify the man you call the doctor?
That man over there.
The records show that the witness has identified the defendant, Ernest Montgomery. Yes, Sergeant, go on, please. What did you see?
Well, the doctor was bending over a girl. She was lying on a table, and he was operating on her.
Objection. The sergeant is not a medical expert. He doesn't know what the doctor was doing.
Sustained. Sergeant, did the doctor have anything in his hand? If so, what?
Yes, sir. Medical instruments.
Were the two persons you saw the only ones on the premises?
No, sir. We found another girl in an adjoining room.
What was that other girl doing?
She was lying in bed. She kept insisting that she couldn't be moved, that she was still under the effect of an anesthetic.
Did the doctor say anything to you concerning that other girl?
Yes, sir. He told us that he had just operated on her and that she wasn't to be moved until the anesthetic had worn off.
Thank you, Sergeant. That will be all. Miss Stafford, You were the person on Dr. Montgomery's operating table when the police broke into the office?
Yes.
Did you go to that office for the purpose of obtaining an illegal operation?
Yes.
Were you pregnant?
Yes.
Then you went to Dr. Montgomery for an abortion?
Yes.
Was the abortion performed?
Just a moment. Mr. Preston, aren't you going to object? The witness is not a qualified medical expert.
The defense is willing to concede that an operation was performed on Miss Stafford, which resulted in the termination of a pregnancy.
Very well. You may proceed.
Miss Stafford, I have just one more question. Who performed the operation? Was it Dr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Thank you, Miss Stafford. Your witness.
Miss Stafford, will you please relate the circumstances which first brought you to Dr. Montgomery?
Objection. Your Honor, such testimony is irrelevant and immaterial.
The district attorney hasn't heard the testimony yet. How does he know it isn't relevant?
You know it as well as I do.
Gentlemen, will you approach the bench? What's the matter with you two? You're as nervous as a couple of brides.
He knows the justification isn't admissible.
My client has something to say. Now, what does he have to do? Take out a full-page ad?
Larry, what do you want me to do? Allow a philosophical bull session?
Why not? Now, we've got to have some latitude when a law has been broken for the purpose of testing it. And why should the defendant take all the risks? I don't think our legal system should show less faith in the inevitability of justice than its questioners do.
What do you say, Frank? I'll leave it up to you.
Well, by objecting, the state's exercised its right. By withdrawing it, we'll demonstrate our faith.
Thanks.
All right, gentlemen. Once more into the breach.
Eleanor, do you recall the question? What were the circumstances which first brought you to Dr. Montgomery?
This is the second time I've been in court in the past 2 months. The first time I was the state's witness in a case of criminal assault.
What kind of assault?
Rape.
Were you the victim?
Yes.
Was the man found guilty of rape?
Yes, he was.
What were the consequences of this act?
I became pregnant.
Did you try and obtain a legal abortion?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell the court and jury the reasons for this?
Well, I didn't want a child whose existence would remind me of ugliness and fear, and I didn't want a child whose father I didn't choose.
Are you married?
No, I'm not.
And were you able to obtain a legal abortion?
No.
How did you try?
Dr. Montgomery tried for me. He sent me to 3 different psychiatrists, but they all said I was emotionally strong enough to go through with the pregnancy.
Did you feel you were?
I don't know. Maybe I was, but how could they expect me to have a baby I couldn't love?
Do you mean to tell this court that having been criminally violated and made pregnant, you had no recourse but to break the law?
None whatsoever.
Did your parents know about this?
Yes, they took me to Dr. Montgomery.
How many visits did you make to Dr. Montgomery?
5 altogether. The first 4 were for consultation, and the 5th for the operation.
What was accomplished by the consultations?
We talked. We went over it again and again, and it wasn't until the 4th visit that Dr. Montgomery consented to operate.
Just one more question, Eleanor. How much did you pay Dr. Montgomery for his services?
$25.
For all 5 visits?
Yes.
Thank you. No more questions.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Miss Stafford, I have only 2 questions. The same 2 I asked before. Was an abortion performed?
Yes.
By the defendant, Dr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Because of the age of the next witness, the court will be cleared of all spectators with the exception of newspaper reporters. It is against this court's principles to exclude the free and public press from proceedings of any kind. But let me remind you, gentlemen, that an atmosphere of close cooperation has always existed between us. I would hope that it continues in the future. I would not like you to use the witness's name in your newspapers, but I must leave that decision entirely up to you, gentlemen. Bailiff, will you clear the court, please?
Miss Mason, I have just 2 questions. Was an abortion performed on you?
Yes.
By the defendant, Dr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Thank you. Your witness.
Sandra, how many times did you see Dr. Montgomery before he performed the abortion?
3 times. And I had a consultation with a psychiatrist.
Was that for the purpose of obtaining a legal operation?
Yes.
Was it granted?
No.
Did Dr. Montgomery ever give you a reason why he was performing the operation?
Yes. He said I wasn't emotionally ready to have a baby. That I was too young and too confused, and there was a bad situation at home.
How much did he charge you?
$20.
Do your parents know about this?
No.
Sandra, what would have happened if Dr. Montgomery had refused to perform the operation?
I would have killed myself.
Perhaps you thought about it, but you wouldn't actually have done it, would you?
Yes. I've already tried once with sleeping pills. Yes, I would have done it.
Why? What were you so afraid of?
My parents. I don't know what I'd do if they found out. I couldn't face them. I just couldn't.
And Dr. Montgomery went over this with you again and again?
Yes. He tried to convince me to tell them, but I wouldn't. And finally understood.
And what about the man?
I don't want him involved.
Did you want to marry him?
No, I didn't, and I don't. I don't want my whole life based on one mistake.
Thank you, Sandra. No more questions.
Miss Mason, I have only 2 questions. Was an abortion performed on you?
Yes.
By the defendant, Dr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, that is the case for the prosecution.
Mr. Preston, is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor. As our first witness, we call Dr. Susan Phillips.
The Manhattan Institute of Medicine functions as an information service for the New York metropolitan area.
What is your position at the Institute, Dr. Phillips?
I'm director of research.
Are you a medical doctor?
No, sir. I have a PhD in sociology.
In the course of your work, have you had the opportunity to compile data on abortion?
Yes, we have. But it's been extremely difficult.
Why is that?
The operation is illegal in all 50 states. Exact information is almost impossible to obtain.
Is abortion always illegal?
Almost always. If an expectant mother can satisfy a doctor, and usually it has to be 3 doctors, that having a baby would be physically or psychiatrically dangerous, a legal operation can be authorized. It doesn't occur very often.
I see. Could you give us an approximate idea of how many illegal abortions are performed each year?
Objection. Your Honor, I fail to see the relevancy of all this.
I don't see any harm in a little objective information. Proceed, please.
Dr. Phillips?
The latest intelligence estimate points to over 1,200,000 illegal abortions a year in the United States.
Excuse me, Doctor. 1,200,000?
Yes, sir. Well over 3,000 a day.
Would it be possible for you to break those figures down for us, please?
Over half the operations are performed on married women. But 1 out of every 10 women in this country becomes pregnant during her unmarried life. And out of the more than 600,000 unmarried pregnancies occurring each year, 9 out of every 10 are medically aborted.
Could you tell us how many involve young girls?
How young?
Teenagers.
About 15%. That's to say that approximately 175,000 abortions each year are performed on girls between the ages of 12 and 19.
Dr. Phillips, does your institute recommend any solution to this problem?
Yes, sir. We believe that abortion should be treated as a social problem rather than a criminal problem.
Objection. The witness is making a conclusion.
I'll sustain it. It will be stricken.
No more questions. My name is Lawrence Preston. I'm an attorney.
Is anything wrong? Have I done anything?
You haven't, Mr. Mason. May I come in?
No. Well, what's it about?
It's quite important. I'd like to talk to you for a moment.
Oh, well, Sandra, would you mind leaving us alone for a few minutes?
I think it would be better if she stayed.
Well, what's this got to do with her?
I'm sorry it had to happen like this, Mr. Mason, and that I'm the one who has to tell you.
Please, Mr. Preston, don't.
Sorry, Sandra, I have to.
What is it? What is it? What's this got to do with you? He helped me, says Sam. Is this you? They writing this about you? Answer me! Are you mixed up in this? Answer me!
Mr. Mason.
You keep out of this! Sandra Mason. I was reading about this. I was thanking God that my daughter wasn't the kind of a girl that would be mixed up in anything ugly like this.
Please, Daddy, don't.
I was even feeling sorry for the parents of the girls who were involved.
Please, please.
Please! 18 years old. You have to have an illegitimate child taken away from you by some filthy doctor.
Mr. Mason!
You get out of my house!
If you don't calm down, I'll leave now and I'll take Sandra with me.
I'm her father.
Then behave as though you are. Dr. Montgomery tried to help her because she was in trouble. Now, I suggest you do the same.
I can't. I'm disgusted by her.
Are you? She made a mistake. Have you never made a mistake? It wouldn't surprise me if you look back over your life. You've made worse ones than this. She tried to keep it from you, to spare you, but she couldn't. She tried to save you from disgrace. Now, you've got to do the same thing for her. What do you think the function of a father is? To reject, to condemn, to punish? Or is it to forgive, to understand, to love, and to protect?
Daddy, please.
I'll be in a minute, okay? You're the reporter who broke that piece about Sandra Mason, aren't you?
Correct.
Well, I'd like to congratulate you, only I guess it doesn't take much to make the front page of that so-called newspaper of yours, does it?
Look, Sonny, I didn't put her on the stand.
The judge asked you to lay off.
Maybe he didn't think it was news. I did.
If they ever give a Pulitzer Prize for garbage, you're going to be first in line.
Yeah. Along with lawyers who defend abortionists. Audrey Gunther.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your name.
Audrey Louise Gunther.
Gunther.
That's right.
Be seated.
Just a moment, Counselor. I have a few words to address to the press. Yesterday, I permitted you gentlemen to remain in a closed court, as has been my custom for as long as I've served on this bench. One of you chose to ignore that trust, and in so doing, placed the reputation of a minor in serious jeopardy. The press may have a responsibility to its readers, but it has an equal one toward those they read about. From now on, when this court is cleared, you will be included. I'm sorry, Mr. Preston. Please proceed.
Miss Gunther, what is your occupation?
I'm a fashion model.
A successful one?
Fairly so.
Did you have occasion to visit the defendant, Dr. Montgomery, and ask for his assistance?
Yes,
You were pregnant?
that's right. I wanted to get married, but unfortunately the gentleman already had one wife. So I decided to go to Dr. Montgomery for help.
Did you receive his help?
Yes, I did.
Now, it's true, isn't it, Miss Gunther, that Dr. Montgomery attempted to dissuade you from having the operation?
That's right.
But you were determined to have an abortion.
Yes,
When was that, Miss Gunther?
4 years ago.
Just a moment. Your Honor, may we approach the bench?
Mr. Preston?
Prosecution has been very generous in allowing irrelevant testimony to be introduced. But now, our patience and our faith are rapidly becoming exhausted. Mr. Preston is picking and choosing from among who knows how many cases over the last several years to find the ones that will do his client the most good.
Does all that eloquence add up to an objection, Mr. Prosecutor?
Yes, sir.
Very well. The objection is sustained.
No further questions. He's opened his mouth. Now let's see if he puts his foot in it.
Preston is about to lose a witness. I hope he knows where to send the body. I've seen your picture in all the magazines, Miss Gunther. You must make a good deal of money. Approximately how much?
Around $50,000 a year.
That is a lot of money. How old are you?
29.
Miss Gunther, do you mean to tell the court that a woman of your age and your means was unable to act within the law?
No.
What was preventing you from having that baby?
Nothing?
And that's what the defendant told you, isn't it? On 7 separate occasions.
Yes.
And yet, in spite of that, he went right ahead and operated anyway, didn't he?
No, he didn't.
Miss Gunther, you have testified that the defendant helped you.
Yes, he did. By refusing to operate.
No further questions.
Mr. Preston, anything on redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Gunther, will you tell the court exactly how Dr. Montgomery helped you?
Objection.
Mr. Preston's question bears on testimony elicited by you during the cross-examination, Mr. Larkin. I must allow him to continue.
Miss Gunther?
Well, Dr. Montgomery convinced me that having an abortion would be a mistake, and that I'd be very sorry for it later. He persuaded me to have the baby. I love my daughter very much. She's the center of my whole life. She's made me very happy.
No more questions. Your Honor, I have only one more witness, the defendant, Dr. Ernest Montgomery. He's been duly informed of his constitutional rights concerning self-incrimination.
Proceed.
How old are you, Doctor?
56.
How long have you been practicing medicine?
32 years.
What was your specialty during most of that time?
Orthopedics.
Then why did you feel you were qualified to perform abortions?
I was able to study and observe there the latest and safest methods of performing such an operation.
You say safest. Then in your opinion, the operation could be dangerous.
Extremely so. In the hands of incompetence, very dangerous. Even fatal.
Have you ever injured a patient?
Never.
It's been testified to by previous witnesses that you engaged in psychological counseling of your patients. Had you any training in this field?
Oh, yes. When I was in Switzerland...
Objection. Your Honor, I fail to see the relevance of this testimony. Of course, at the Harvard Business School is no justification for embezzlement.
I'll sustain it. I think you've established your point, Mr. Preston. You may move on to other areas.
Dr. Montgomery, why did you go to Switzerland in the first place? You had an extremely successful practice here in New York. Why did you abandon it?
Well, after my daughter was killed, I wanted to go away to take stock of my life, I suppose.
Now, Doctor, isn't it true that your daughter's death had a direct bearing on the branch of medicine you subsequently chose?
Perhaps.
On the stone over your daughter's grave, there's an inscription. It's not the usual sort of epitaph one finds on graves, Doctor. Did you put it there?
Yes.
Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth. That's part of a quotation, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you recall the source, what it was taken from?
No.
It's from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Do you remember the next line, Doctor? Or shall I refresh your memory?
No. I remember. Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers.
Doctor, was your daughter butchered?
Yes.
By whom?
I don't know. I never found out.
What happened, Doctor? What happened, Doctor? I need this.
Well, she was 18 when she became pregnant. I didn't know about it. She never told me. I suppose it isn't the sort of thing that young girls tell their fathers. Anyway, it happened. She must have been desperate, frightened and alone. Too young to use good judgment. So she went to a doctor. Except that he couldn't have been much of a doctor, not with what he did to her. He bungled the operation, and he put her in a taxicab, hemorrhaging, and sent her home. I tried to help her, but it was too late. She died 3 hours later.
It was after that you went to Switzerland.
Yes, I wanted to get away to think things out. And finally, I decided to do what I could to see that other frightened and desperate young girls wouldn't be cut up and thrown away the way mine was.
Doctor, these frightened and desperate girls, must they break the law?
What choice have they got? Either they become social outcasts by obeying the law and having their children, or they break the law. The operation, at least, can sometimes be kept a secret. It isn't so easy to hide the child.
Doctor, weren't you making it easier for these young girls to make the same mistake again?
Well, I worried about that at first, but so few of them came back a second time, and when they did, they were refused, that I realized that most of them had learned from the one mistake. I hear from some of them. Most of them are leading normal married lives now with children that they want and love. Not children who are the products of a casual experience, but the basic reason for that experience.
Doctor, what would have happened to these young girls if you hadn't helped them?
I don't know. Most of them had no money, no friends. They could have fallen into the hands of abortionists who might have maimed them, even murdered them. Many of them do, you know. Many of them do. At least I'm a good doctor. If nothing else, I'm that.
Doctor, is it your opinion that the law on abortion is unjust?
A law can't be enforced against desperate human beings unless it offers some reasonable alternative to breaking that law. In this case, there isn't any. So far, medicine has provided the only answer. But society condemns it. They call it dirty. All right, then, let them provide another answer. Anything. Don't they realize that they force these young girls to grasp at any promise that's offered to them? And if this promise remains so rigidly outside the law, young girls in trouble will invariably fall into the hands of quacks and butchers. Well, someday, I'm sure there will be a more humane and more reasonable approach. I simply tried to help a lot of people who couldn't wait.
Thank you, Doctor.
Doctor, when you're performing one of your operations, aren't you destroying a human life?
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
We're discussing a human organism here. Something without shape, memory, experience, or personality. Such an organism is being destroyed, there's no doubt about it. But most women are capable of creating such an organism 13 times in a year. If you were to ask me whether or not a human being is being destroyed, I would have to answer no.
Still, it is a living thing, isn't it? Isn't life sacred?
Yes. But there's nothing sacred about a hopeless life. A life without love and security, without happiness. A life completely unwanted by everyone concerned.
Doctor, you said that there was no alternative to breaking the law, that these young girls have no choice. But isn't it true that there are homes specifically provided for unwed mothers, where their babies are looked after, and arrangements are made for adoption?
Yes, there are such homes.
Well, isn't such a home an alternative to breaking the law?
Depends on which law you mean. A young mother giving up her child, agreeing never to see it again, violates every law of human behavior. Now, you may call that an alternative. I call it an atrocity.
All right, Doctor. I have only two more questions. First, Were you performing an illegal operation at the time you were arrested?
Yes.
Then you admit to knowingly and willfully breaking the law.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. That will be all.
Your Honor, the defense rests.
I don't know much about this sort of thing. Are they taking a long time?
Not particularly. An hour and 10 minutes.
You don't hold out much hope, do you?
Well, it's in the hands of the jury, Doctor. You never know how they're going to call it.
Tell me something, Doctor. Suppose you were to walk out of this courtroom completely free. What would you do? You've lost your license to practice medicine.
I've thought about that. I'd leave the country, probably. Go someplace where doctors are needed. Africa, perhaps the Far East. I have something to contribute. I'd find a way to do it.
All rise. Would you take the verdict, please?
Mr. Foreman, will you rise and face the defendant? Will the defendant rise and face the jury? Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have.
How do you find?
We find the defendant guilty as charged. But, Your Honor, we'd like to add that we are unanimous in asking for leniency.
Thank you. The jury is discharged with praise for its verdict and the assurance that though it is not binding on the court, the recommendation for leniency will be considered. The defendant is remanded over until sentencing. Court is adjourned.
I'm sorry, Doctor.
No, it was a fair trial. There was no other verdict possible. I know that. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Preston. I've been heard. That's all I asked. I couldn't ask more.
I'll never forget this. I only hope I always feel as strongly about my principles as you do about yours.
The judge would like to see you in chambers, Mr. Preston.
Oh, Larry, come in. Sit down. I just wanted to tell you both how well you did. It was a well-run trial.
Well, Frank gave me a lot of room to move around in, more than I had a right to.
Tell him to forget it. Tell him I'm not speaking to him after that rotten trick he pulled with the fashion model.
What happened to you there?
I'm so busy looking at the girl, I forgot to watch Larry.
I know you're wondering what I'm going to do with your man. Is he through with illegal operations?
Told me he wants to leave the country and go someplace where there's a shortage of doctors.
Well, I still have a lot more thinking to do. But if the inclination I have right now persists, I'll probably throw the book at him. The maximum sentence, and then suspended. Does he know what that'll mean? The first time he breaks a law, any law, he'll have to serve the full sentence.
I'll tell him.
How do you feel about that, Frank?
Professionally, no comment. Personally, it's okay.
I'd like to read you both something I ran across the other day in one of these medical journals you'll find in doctors' offices. I think it applies more profoundly to lawyers than to doctors. The law, before closing off one avenue of recovery from the frailty of human behavior, must first make certain that another recovery remains, or indeed exists at all. That was written by Dr. Ernest Montgomery.